I couldn't believe my eyes when my in-laws left my 8-year-old daughter standing by the doorway while everyone else went in without her. I felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. My daughter, Lily, looked up at me with wide, confused eyes, clutching her little coat as if it could shield her from the cold sting of rejection. I wanted to storm in and demand an explanation, but I forced myself to stay calm, for Lily's sake. The Collins estate was buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and holiday cheer. Every corner of the grand hall seemed alive, yet the moment felt like a cruel trick. Marlene, my mother-in-law, waved at acquaintances, smiling with effortless charm, while Stuart, my father-in-law, stood by the fireplace, deep in conversation, completely ignoring the small figure at the doorway. Lily shifted from one foot to the other, unsure if she should follow or stay put. My stomach tightened. I had never felt so helpless. I knelt down to Lily's level and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Come stand with me." She hesitated but finally stepped closer, clutching my hand tightly. I could feel her tiny fingers trembling, and my heart ached. How could family, people who were supposed to care, treat her like she didn't belong? I wanted to say something, but the words caught in my throat. I wasn't going to yell. This was bigger than a scene. It was a lesson in quiet strength. As I looked around, I noticed subtle cues I had seen before. The sideways glances, the almost imperceptible sighs, the way Marlene's smile froze for a fraction of a second when Lily tried to join a conversation. It was clear, they had no intention of including her. It wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. Rage bubbled under my skin, but I swallowed it down, reminding myself that any outburst would only draw attention to Lily's hurt. I pulled Lily closer, feeling her small hand squeeze mine in a mix of fear and trust. "Don't worry, sweetie. You're safe with me," I murmured. In that moment, a vow formed in my mind, quiet but unbreakable. No one would ever make Lily feel small again. I would protect her, guide her, and if necessary, make sure those who tried to harm her felt the weight of their actions. I straightened up and offered a polite, calm smile toward Marlene and Stuart, masking the storm inside me. This was not the time to confront them openly. My daughter deserved better than to see me lose control. Instead, I would watch, learn, and plan. Their cruelty had exposed them, and I intended to use it carefully, turning this betrayal into a lesson they would not forget. Lily's eyes met mine again, trusting and innocent, and I knew that protecting her was worth every challenge that lay ahead. This was only the beginning. I quickly knelt beside Lily and took her small hand in mine. "It's okay, sweetie. Don't be upset," I whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She looked up at me, eyes wide and worried, and I could feel her little body trembling. I hugged her gently, trying to calm the fear and confusion I knew she felt. "I've got you," I said. "Nothing bad is going to happen while I'm here." I stood and faced my mother-in-law, forcing myself to stay calm even though my heart was pounding. Marlene's smile was tight, almost rehearsed, and she said in front of everyone, "Oh, Elena, you're overreacting. It's just a little misunderstanding." Her words were meant to make me look silly, to make it seem like I was making a scene over nothing. But I could see right through her, and I refused to let her make me feel guilty in front of Lily. Ryan didn't say anything. He shifted uncomfortably, looking between me and his mother, and I felt a stab of frustration. I wanted him to defend us, to speak up, but he just stayed quiet. That hesitation made my chest tighten. I loved him, but I realized that sometimes he let his family's influence make him unsure. I reminded myself that I couldn't rely on him entirely. I had to be strong on my own for Lily. As I held Lily close, I started thinking about all the times Marlene and Stuart had done things like this, small, cruel things that no one else noticed. Little insults, moments of ignoring Lily, or saying things that made her feel small. It was always subtle, hidden behind smiles and polite words. I could see the pattern now. Their behavior wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, carefully planned to make us feel powerless. I looked at Lily and tried to focus on keeping her calm. "Let's stay right here together," I said softly. She nodded, trusting me completely, and I felt a surge of determination. I would not let them hurt her like this again. I had to be smart, quiet, and careful. Acting too quickly or angrily would only give them power. I took a deep breath and decided I needed to watch them more closely. Every word, every glance, every small action, they all mattered. I needed to understand their patterns and plan my response carefully. It wasn't just about this one moment. It was about protecting Lily in the long run and making sure she never felt unimportant or unwanted in that family again. So I hugged her once more and whispered, "We'll figure this out, Lily. I promise. No one can treat you like this, not while I'm here." My mind was already racing with ideas, quietly observing, quietly planning. I would turn this betrayal into a lesson they wouldn't forget, but I would do it carefully, without putting Lily in the middle. From that moment, I knew I had to be patient, strong, and always one step ahead. I started paying closer attention to everything my in-laws did. Every time Marlene made a small joke at Lily's expense or ignored her when she tried to join conversations, I noticed it. Even tiny things like forgetting her birthday or passing over her accomplishments were part of a bigger pattern. Stuart wasn't much better. He would sometimes shrug off Lily's questions or brush past her as if she didn't exist. I quietly wrote notes in my phone, keeping track of each incident, so I wouldn't forget anything. Ryan watched some of it too, but he stayed quiet. I didn't want to pressure him, so I just reminded him gently. "See how they treat her? Notice the way they ignore her sometimes." He nodded, a little reluctantly, and I could tell he was starting to see what I had already known for a long time. I needed him aware, but I also had to be careful not to push him too far too fast. One afternoon, while we were at a small family gathering, I met Aunt Harriet. She was Ryan's distant aunt, someone who usually stayed on the sidelines. I noticed her watching Marlene and Stuart quietly, and when she caught my eye, she gave a subtle nod. Later, when we were alone, she said softly, "I've seen how they treat Lily. You're not imagining things." I felt a small surge of relief. Finally, someone else understood and was quietly on my side. She didn't want to cause a scene, but she promised to support me in subtle ways. Having her quietly watching too gave me hope that I wasn't entirely alone. With Aunt Harriet's quiet support and Ryan starting to notice the patterns, I felt more determined. I began thinking carefully about how to use the evidence I was collecting. I didn't want to confront them blindly or in anger. I needed proof, something concrete that showed the way they tried to belittle Lily and make her feel invisible. I pictured moments where their words and actions could be revealed to others, showing everyone the truth without me having to create a fight. While observing, I accidentally overheard a conversation that gave me pause. Marlene was talking to a friend about a hidden financial problem she was dealing with, something she had kept secret from the family. My mind raced as I listened carefully, realizing this could be the leverage I needed. If I handled it right, I could reveal both the way she treated Lily and her hidden secrets. It was risky, but it was a start. I felt a mix of excitement and caution. Every detail I collected now mattered, and I knew I had to be patient. Slowly, methodically, I would gather the pieces I needed. Each small injustice, each sneer or slight, each hidden truth was part of the bigger picture. One day, I would turn all of it into a plan that protected Lily and showed the world exactly who Marlene and Stuart really were. Until then, I would watch, record, and think carefully about every move. At the next family gathering, I made sure Lily was included in every conversation. When Marlene made a sharp comment about Lily being clumsy, I smiled warmly at my daughter and said, "Lily worked really hard on her school project this week. She even stayed up late finishing it, and it turned out amazing." I could see Marlene's smile falter for a moment, and I knew the subtle reminder of Lily's efforts had embarrassed her quietly. I didn't make a big deal, but everyone around noticed Lily's accomplishments, and she beamed with pride. During the evening, I started pointing out little inconsistencies in Marlene and Stuart's words, but in a careful way that didn't seem confrontational. When Marlene tried to take credit for organizing something Lily had actually done, I casually mentioned, "It's impressive how Lily planned all of this herself. She really thought about every detail." Stuart looked slightly uncomfortable, realizing the truth was being acknowledged. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to let others notice without me openly attacking them. Ryan was watching all of this. I noticed the way he glanced at me, a mixture of surprise and admiration. He saw how I handled the situation without anger, how I protected Lily and yet exposed their small manipulations subtly. I realized he was starting to trust my judgment more, beginning to respect the decisions I was making. That gave me a quiet confidence. I didn't need to force him to act. He was beginning to see the situation clearly on his own. Marlene started to notice the shift too. Her comments became sharper, and I could sense that she was growing uneasy. She tried to regain control, subtly directing attention away from Lily, whispering remarks to others, and attempting to isolate her. I saw her frustration growing as my calm, strategic actions kept shining a light on her behavior. It was clear she understood something was changing, that I wasn't going to allow her to belittle my daughter without consequence. I made sure every interaction with Lily reinforced her confidence. When Marlene tried to exclude her from a small game or activity, I stepped in naturally, including Lily in ways that highlighted her strengths and talents. People started noticing the difference in Lily's energy and presence, and it irritated Marlene even more. She tried small manipulations, but I stayed calm and clever, always one step ahead. By the end of the evening, I could see it clearly. Marlene's attempts to control the room and Lily's involvement were failing. She was escalating, trying new ways to isolate my daughter, but I had already anticipated some of her moves. I smiled to myself quietly, knowing that I was slowly taking back control in a way that was safe, subtle, and effective. Lily was happy, I was calm, and Marlene's discomfort was a sign that my small, careful strategies were working. After the party, I took Lily to her room and sat on the edge of her bed. I held her close and whispered, "I'm proud of you, sweetie. You were brave today." She smiled shyly, leaning against me, and I could feel the trust and love growing between us. I wanted her to know that no matter what her grandparents did, she would always have me. We spent the evening reading her favorite stories, talking quietly about school and friends. Each small moment was important. It reminded her she was safe and loved, and it reminded me why I had to stay strong. The next few days, I paid close attention to how Marlene tried to manipulate others. She would make comments to friends or family, trying to make Lily look small or like she didn't belong. I learned to step in subtly. Sometimes I would correct a statement casually. Sometimes I would highlight a positive fact about Lily, always in a calm, quiet way. I could see people starting to notice, even if they didn't say anything out loud. Slowly, I was turning the small manipulations against Marlene without confrontation, using her own behavior to reveal her true attitude. I also thought carefully about past mistakes my in-laws had made. Every slip, every bad decision, every time they had treated someone unfairly. These were things I could use if needed. I began casually reminding friends and relatives of certain events, in a way that didn't look like revenge. Just small hints here and there, letting others realize that Marlene and Stuart weren't as perfect as they tried to appear. It was subtle but effective. People started questioning their actions quietly, and I felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. Ryan was more difficult. I could see he was torn between loyalty to his family and his growing understanding of the way they treated Lily. Sometimes he hesitated, unsure whether to speak up or stay neutral. I didn't push him, but I gently reminded him, "You know what's right, Ryan. We can't let this go unnoticed." Slowly, he started observing more closely, and I knew he was beginning to choose supporting me and protecting Lily over blindly defending his parents. It was a slow process, but I could see the shift. One evening, while going through some family documents for household planning, I discovered something important. Stuart had a hidden business problem that no one outside the family knew about. It wasn't illegal, but it was sensitive, something that could damage his reputation if handled carefully. I realized this was the leverage I needed. Combined with the small injustices I had already documented, it could be the key to exposing their cruelty and protecting Lily. I held Lily in my arms that night, feeling determined. I had the love, the evidence, and the careful plan forming in my mind. Everything was coming together. I would act with patience and strategy, making sure Lily remained safe while I quietly prepared for the moment when Marlene and Stuart's true colors would be revealed. I knew exactly how I would use what I had discovered. I knew I couldn't face Marlene and Stuart alone, so I talked to Ryan one evening when Lily was asleep. I explained carefully how important it was for him to support me, but without making any sudden moves that might scare Lily. "We have to be smart about this," I told him. "If we act too soon, it could hurt her. We need to wait for the right moment, and then we show the truth." He listened quietly, nodding, and I could see him finally understanding the seriousness of the situation. He agreed to stay close and back me up when the time came. Once I had Ryan on my side, I started planning the confrontation. It wouldn't be an angry scene or a public fight. I wanted it to be careful and controlled, a moment where the truth came out naturally. I pictured the gathering, Marlene trying to manipulate the conversation, Stuart smiling politely while hiding his secrets, and the rest of the family unaware of what was really happening. My goal was to expose their actions and the hidden problems they had, without causing unnecessary drama. Everything had to be precise. The tension in the house grew as Marlene and Stuart started noticing my calm confidence. They would glance at me during conversations, their smiles tighter than usual. Sometimes I caught Marlene whispering to Stuart, and I knew she was starting to suspect that I was planning something. It felt like a quiet game of chess, each move measured and deliberate. I didn't panic. I stayed composed, knowing every small step I took was preparing for the bigger reveal. Lily began noticing my quiet focus, too. She asked me why I was making so many notes and talking quietly to Ryan. I tried to reassure her, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew something was different. I hugged her gently and said, "Everything is okay, sweetheart. I'm just making sure no one can hurt you again." She nodded but stayed close, sensing my determination. Her trust gave me strength. I spent the next few days carefully preparing everything for the family gathering. I organized the evidence I had collected, thought through the order in which I would reveal things, and planned small ways to include Lily, so she felt safe and proud. Every detail mattered, and I rehearsed the conversations quietly in my mind. I wanted the truth to be clear, undeniable, and fair. By the time the gathering arrived, I felt ready. Ryan was quietly supportive. Lily was aware that something was happening but reassured, and I had everything in place. Marlene and Stuart had no idea how much I knew or how carefully I had prepared. This was my chance to turn the tables, to protect Lily, and to show the family the truth. I took a deep breath, knowing the next steps would be the most important yet, and I was ready to act. The day of the family gathering finally arrived. I walked into the room with Lily at my side, holding her hand tightly. She looked up at me, nervous but trusting, and I smiled, giving her the courage she needed. I had planned everything carefully, and now it was time to put it into action. My heart raced, but I stayed calm on the outside. As the party went on, I waited for the right moment. When Marlene began making a small, cutting remark about Lily in front of the relatives, I stepped forward. "Actually," I said softly but clearly, "Lily worked very hard on that project. She stayed up late and thought of every detail herself." People turned to look, and I could see the surprise on Marlene's face. She tried to laugh it off, but the truth was already in the room. Next, I spoke about some of the little manipulations Marlene and Stuart had done over the years. I didn't shout or accuse them, but I told short, honest stories that highlighted their behavior. I mentioned times they ignored Lily, tried to take credit for her efforts, and subtly belittled her in front of others. I watched their expressions carefully. Marlene's smile dropped, and Stuart looked uncomfortable. I could see the tension rising as their hypocrisy became visible to everyone. I made sure Lily was involved in a positive way. I asked her to share one of her recent accomplishments with the family. She spoke confidently, her words clear and proud. I felt a rush of pride as she stood tall, showing everyone how strong and capable she was. The room's attention shifted, and it was clear that Lily had grown. She wasn't afraid or small anymore. She was shining, and it made Marlene and Stuart even more uneasy. Ryan stepped forward too. He put a hand on my shoulder and gave a small nod of support. "Elena is right," he said quietly but firmly. "Lily deserves to be seen and respected." Hearing him speak like that, in front of everyone, gave me strength. I knew I wasn't alone, and it showed Marlene and Stuart that their influence over the family was slipping. By the end of the evening, I could see the effect of my plan. Marlene and Stuart looked shocked, their usual control gone. Family members were whispering among themselves, realizing what had been happening. I had exposed their cruelty without raising my voice or losing my dignity. I had protected Lily and shown her the power of honesty and courage. After the party, I hugged Lily tightly. "You were amazing tonight," I whispered. I felt a quiet sense of justice inside me. The betrayal had been turned into a lesson, and the people who tried to hurt us had lost their power. I looked at my daughter and smiled, knowing we had taken the first big step toward a safer, happier future. After the family event, things began to change quietly but clearly. Ryan and I grew closer. I could see him noticing more of the small ways I protected Lily and handled difficult situations. He started trusting my judgment completely, and our conversations became open and honest. We laughed more, planned together, and supported each other in ways we hadn't before. The tension that had existed between us slowly faded, replaced by a sense of partnership and understanding. Lily started to feel safe in ways she never had before. She smiled more, talked about her day freely, and even joined new activities at school without hesitation. I watched her grow with pride, seeing her confidence bloom. She no longer looked to me with worry or doubt. She knew I would always be there to protect her. Her happiness became a quiet victory, and I felt a deep sense of relief knowing that my efforts were making a difference. Marlene and Stuart tried small ways to regain control. They would make subtle comments at family events or try to isolate Lily during conversations, but their attempts failed. The family had started noticing their behavior for what it really was, and the influence they once had was gone. It was clear they could no longer manipulate situations without others seeing through them. Their frustration was visible, but it no longer mattered. The damage they had tried to do could not touch us anymore. With the house calmer and our relationship stronger, I turned my attention to practical matters. I carefully reviewed our family finances, making sure everything was secure. I made plans for bills, savings, and household stability, knowing that financial independence would give us more freedom and protection. I felt in control for the first time, confident that Lily and I were safe from both emotional and financial harm. Even though the danger from my in-laws had lessened, I remained careful. I watched interactions quietly and stayed aware of any new moves they might try. But I no longer felt the fear or pressure I had felt before. Their power over us was gone, and I could enjoy our home and family life without constant worry. I had turned their cruelty into a lesson and a safeguard, protecting both Lily and my marriage in the process. Every evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, I saw her peaceful smile and felt a wave of calm. She had grown stronger, I had grown stronger, and Ryan had grown stronger too. We were a team now, and nothing could shake the bond we had built. I knew challenges might come in the future, but for now we had stability, safety, and love. The in-laws' attempts to control or harm us had failed, and that quiet victory gave me confidence to move forward. We could live fully, without fear, and with the assurance that we had faced the past and come out stronger together. After everything that had happened, I spent some quiet moments thinking about how far we had come. I realized how important patience had been. If I had rushed or reacted angrily, things could have turned out badly. Staying calm, observing carefully, and planning each step had made all the difference. I also understood the value of thinking ahead, of using intelligence and strategy instead of emotions alone. It wasn't easy, but it had worked. I felt proud of how I had handled the situation and the example I had set for Lily. I also made time to reconnect with friends I hadn't spoken to in a while. I visited neighbors, chatted with old classmates, and joined a few local community activities. It felt good to rebuild those connections, to be part of a community where I could be supported and where Lily could grow surrounded by positive people. Seeing the smiles and warmth from friends reminded me that life was bigger than the small battles with my in-laws. It gave me energy and hope for the future. Meanwhile, I noticed subtle changes in Marlene and Stuart's social presence. They had always tried to appear perfect, but now people seemed to see them differently. Friends were quieter around them. Family members no longer followed every instruction or flattery. The little control they had tried to keep was slipping. I didn't need to celebrate it openly. I just noticed it quietly. Their isolation was a natural consequence of their own actions, and it reassured me that our efforts had made a real difference. Lily was changing too. I could see it in the way she spoke, the confidence in her smile, and the trust in her eyes. She no longer hesitated to share her thoughts or ask for help. She knew I would always be there to protect her and support her. That trust was precious, and I cherished it. I realized that my main goal had always been to give her a safe, happy environment, and now she could truly feel secure. Watching her grow made all the effort worth it. I reflected on everything I had learned. Protecting Lily had been the most important thing, and it would always remain that way. I had learned to act with care, to stay composed under pressure, and to think ahead. I had seen that patience, love, and strategic action could achieve what anger or confrontation alone could not. My strength and resilience had helped Lily feel safe and had ensured that our little family could thrive. As I watched Lily play quietly in the living room, I felt a deep sense of calm and fulfillment. I knew there would be challenges in the future, but I also knew that together we could face them. My priority had always been her well-being, and that would never change. Love, careful planning, and quiet determination had given us a strong foundation. I felt confident that, no matter what came next, we would continue to grow, safe and protected, and ready for whatever life brought our way. It had been months since the big family confrontation, and life had begun to settle into a new, calmer rhythm. I could finally feel a sense of closure. Marlene and Stuart had faded quietly from the center of our lives. Their attempts to manipulate or control us had stopped, not because I had fought with them directly, but because I had stayed calm, careful, and strategic. Justice had been served in its own way, and it felt satisfying without any need for anger or revenge that could hurt Lily. One afternoon, as Lily and I sat together at the kitchen table, I noticed her watching me closely. She had a small, thoughtful look on her face. "Mom," she said softly, "I'm glad you stood up for me. I feel safe now." I reached over and held her hand, squeezing it gently. Her words made my chest warm with a quiet pride. She had seen how I had handled everything, how I stayed strong, calm, and careful, and it gave her a sense of security she had never had before. That was worth more than anything else. I thought back to all the steps I had taken, the careful observations, the subtle strategies, the way I had protected Lily while exposing the truth. It wasn't easy, but I realized that betrayal didn't have to destroy me or my family. Instead, it could be a lesson, a way to grow stronger and wiser. I had learned that standing up for what is right doesn't need to involve shouting, fighting, or causing harm. Strength could be quiet, deliberate, and smart. Lily leaned against me, and I could see the trust shining in her eyes. She knew that no matter what happened, I would keep her safe. That trust was the most important outcome of everything. It reminded me that all my planning and patience had not just been about showing the in-laws the consequences of their actions. They had been about creating a safe, loving home for Lily. That goal had been accomplished, and I could finally feel relief. I also reflected on myself. I had changed in the process. I had become more patient, more composed, and more confident in my ability to handle difficult situations. I realized that betrayal could be a teacher if approached with care and strategy. I didn't need to be cruel or seek revenge with harsh words or actions. I could protect my family, uphold justice, and remain true to my values all at the same time. As I looked around our home, at Lily playing happily with her toys and Ryan quietly reading nearby, I felt a deep sense of peace. The tension of the past had dissolved, replaced by security, love, and a quiet satisfaction. We had survived the betrayal, learned from it, and grown stronger. I knew that whatever challenges might come in the future, we were ready. For now, the chapter was complete, and it ended with calm, dignity, and the knowledge that justice and love could coexist. Was Elena right to stand up to her in-laws the way she did, or should she have taken a softer approach? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear them. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories like this.